Imagine the world waking up, not to the sound of traffic or an alarm clock, but to the gentle whisper of wind sweeping across an endless sea of grass. This is the Great Plains, but not as we know it today. The sun, a pale, hopeful orb, climbs into a vast, empty sky, painting the horizon in soft shades of rose and gold. The air is cool and crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and wild blossoms. It's a scene of profound tranquility, a quiet beginning to a day that stretches back thousands upon thousands of years. Look closer. Beneath this blanket of serenity, the land itself holds a deep and ancient secret. Long before the thundering herds of bison carved their paths across these prairies, long before the first pioneers cast their long shadows from covered wagons, this was a different kingdom altogether. The grass is here, swaying in the breeze. Remember a heavier footstep, a more colossal presence. This was a world ruled by giants. Feel the ground tremble, whoosh slightly. It's a rhythmic, powerful vibration, a deep drum beat that speaks of immense weight and steady, deliberate movement. Out of the morning mist, a shape begins to emerge. It's massive, larger than any creature you might imagine roaming these lands today. A great, shaggy silhouette against the rising sun, its form both familiar and yet impossibly ancient. You can almost hear the low rumble, a sound that resonates deep in your chest, a communication across the ages. And then you see them, the unmistakable, magnificent curve of tusks, sweeping upward like polished arcs of ivory. These aren't just any creatures. They are the true titans of the plains. Mammoths. Colombian mammoths, to be precise, wandering through this primordial dawn. Their thick, shaggy coats, a mix of brown and dusty gold, catch the first rays of light. They move not with haste, but with a calm, ponderous grace, their huge, padded feet pressing softly into the rich soil. A small family group emerges from the mist. A massive matriarch leads the way, her wise, ancient eyes scanning the horizon. She uses her powerful trunk, a marvel of muscle and sensitivity, to pluck a tuft of prairie grass, dusting it against her leg before bringing it to her mouth. Beside her, a younger male playfully nudges his sibling, their smaller, still developing tusks clashing with a soft click, and trailing behind is a calf, barely reaching its mother's knee. Staying close for warmth and protection, its every move a miniature echo of the adults. This isn't a scene from a fantasy novel. This was the reality of North America for millennia. This vast expanse of grass wasn't just a landscape. It was a larder, a boundless buffet that sustained these magnificent animals. They were the original landscape architects, their grazing patterns shaping the very ecosystem around them. They cleared pathways, dispersed seeds, and their very presence defined the rhythm of life on the plains. They were as much a part of this land as the soil and the sky. Imagine standing here, a silent observer from another time. You'd be humbled by their scale, mesmerized by their gentle power. You'd watch as they drink from a shallow, meandering river, their reflections shimmering on the water's surface. The sounds would be of munching grass, the soft calls between mother and calf, and the constant, rustling sigh of the wind. It's a symphony of a lost world, a world dominated not by humans, but by these incredible, majestic beasts. But where did they come from? How did these giants, whose ancestors walked the frozen steppes of Siberia, come to thrive in the heart of a continent that would one day be called America? Their story is one of incredible migration, adaptation, and survival. It's a journey written across ice and land, a testament to the resilience of life in the face of a changing planet. They crossed bridges of land that no longer exist, ventured into new territories, and evolved to suit their new home. The Colombian mammoth was a master of this environment, larger and less hairy than its more famous cousin, the woolly mammoth. It was perfectly suited to the temperate grasslands of the south. Its story is a crucial, yet often overlooked, chapter in the epic of the Americas. Before the pyramids, before the first cities, before recorded history even began, it was the age of the mammoth, and as the sun climbs higher, illuminating this ancient tableau, we're left with a sense of wonder and a profound question. What happened to them? How could such dominant, successful creatures simply vanish from the face of the earth? Their quiet beginning on these plains is just the first chapter of a dramatic and mysterious story, a story of climate, of humanity, and of extinction. A story that we are only just beginning to piece together, bone by bone, tusk by tusk. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you were as captivated by this lost world as I am, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We have so many more secrets from the past to uncover together. Ring that notification bell so you won't miss our next chapter, where we'll delve deeper into the lives and the ultimate fate of these magnificent giants. See you next time. Start with a wide, sweeping shot of a modern-day prairie, then transition to a CGI depiction of the prehistoric Great Plains. Oh, and welcome back to our journey through time. Today, we're venturing into a world untouched by human hands, a world both familiar and alien. We're stepping back into the Pleistocene epoch to explore Chapter 2 of our story. The Great Plains. Before humans. Imagine a land of immense scale, a continent-spanning ocean of grass stretching further than any eye could see. This wasn't the tamed prairie we know today. This was a wild, untamed wilderness. The horizon was a razor-sharp line, broken only by the curve of the earth itself. The sky above was vast and unforgiving, a canvas for dramatic, fast-moving clouds. And the wind was a constant presence. It wasn't a gentle breeze. It was a powerful, chilling force, a remnant of the great ice sheets that loomed to the north. These colossal glaciers, miles thick in some places, acted like the planet's air conditioner. They funneled frigid, dense air southward, a relentless flow that swept across the plains. This glacial wind shaped everything. It bent the grasses, carved strange shapes into the soft earth, and carried the scent of distant ice and damp soil for hundreds of miles. It was a wind that you didn't just feel on your skin. You felt it in your bones. It was the breath of the Ice Age. Crisscrossing this immense landscape were rivers unlike any we have today. They weren't confined to neat, gentle banks. These were wild, braided rivers, sprawling networks of channels that shifted with every season. Fed by the colossal meltwater from the retreating glaciers, they were powerful and unpredictable. In the spring, they would swell into raging torrents, carrying massive chunks of ice and sediment, rearranging the landscape in a matter of days. They were the arteries of this ancient world, carrying life-giving water deep into the heart of the continent, creating lush corridors of gallery forests filled with willows and cottonwoods amidst the endless sea of grass. These river valleys were oases, vital havens for the incredible creatures that called this place home. Now, let's populate this epic landscape. Forget what you think you know about wildlife. This was the age of megaphonion era of giants. Dominating the scene were the mammoths, not just one kind, but several. The most famous, the woolly mammoth, was more at home in the colder northern steppe. But its larger cousin, the Columbian mammoth, was the undisputed king of the Great Plains, standing up to 13 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing over 10 tons. These were walking mountains. Imagine seeing a herd of them. Their massive, curved tusks sweeping through the tall grasses, their low, rumbling calls echoing 4 miles across the open expanse. They were ecosystem engineers, their immense weight and grazing habits shaping the very structure of the grasslands, knocking down trees and creating open spaces for other species to thrive. But they were not the only giants. Grazing peacefully, though with an imposing presence, were the giant ground sloths. These weren't the slow, tree-dwelling creatures we know from South America. Picture a sloth, the size of an elephant, like the Jefferson's ground sloth, weighing several tons. It could stand on its powerful hind legs, using its muscular tail as a third point of support, to reach high into the branches of trees along the riverbanks, pulling them down with its long, clawed forelimbs. Despite their size, they were gentle herbivores, moving with a slow, deliberate grace through their world. Look closer, into the taller grasses and along the edges of the woodlands. You might see herds of ancient horses, smaller and stockier than modern breeds, and the western camel, a camelid species native to North America that was taller than the dromedaries of today. Great herds of longhorn bison, with horn spans reaching over 6 feet, grazed in numbers that would dwarf even the legendary herds of the 19th century. Their thundering hooves would have sounded like constant, rolling thunder. Of course, where there are herbivores, there are predators. And the predators of the Pleistocene plains were the stuff of nightmares. The most iconic, without a doubt, was the saber-toothed cat Smilodon fatalis. This wasn't a lion or a tiger. It was a different beast altogether. Built like a bear, with a powerful chest and short, muscular limbs. It was an ambush predator of immense strength. Its defining feature, of course, were those terrifying, 8-inch-long, canine teeth. These weren't for slashing, but for stabbing. Smilodon would use its incredible upper body strength to wrestle a bison or a young mammoth to the ground, and then deliver a precise, fatal bite to the soft throat. It was a brutal, efficient killing machine. But Smilodon wasn't the only top predator. Stalking the plains was the American lion, a subspecies of lion that was about 25% larger than its modern African relatives, making it one of the largest cats that ever lived. Faster and more agile than Smilodon, it likely hunted in prides, tackling large prey like horses and bison in the open grasslands. And we can't forget the direwolf. Made famous by pop culture, the direwolf was a real and formidable predator. It was heavier and more robustly built than the modern gray wolf, with a more powerful bite. They roamed in large packs, a coordinated force of nature capable of harassing and eventually bringing down even the largest herbivores. Their howls, deeper and more resonant than any wolf you've ever heard, would have been a chilling soundtrack to the Ice Age night. This was a complete, intricate ecosystem, a complex web of life and death playing out on a colossal stage. Every creature had its role. The giant herbivores shaped the plant life. The powerful predators kept their populations in check, and smaller creatures, like the giant beavers that built dams along the rivers or the massive short-faced bear that could stand 12 feet tall, filled every available niche. It was a world of balance, but also a world of constant struggle. A world ruled by the changing seasons, the flow of the glacial rivers, and the eternal dance between predator and prey. For tens of thousands of years, this ecosystem thrived, a vibrant, thrumming testament to the power of nature. It was a world perfectly adapted to the cold, windy climate of the Ice Age. But nothing lasts forever. As the great glaciers to the north began their final, dramatic retreat, the climate started to change. The winds softened, the temperatures rose, and the very nature of the grasslands began to shift. And from the south, a new and revolutionary force was making its way onto the plains. A new predator, not as strong as a Smilodon, or as fast as an American lion, but armed with intelligence, cooperation, and deadly new tools. Humans had arrived, and their arrival would change the Great Plains forever, setting the stage for the dramatic events we will explore in our next chapter. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back to the Ice Age. It's truly humbling to imagine such a world. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the past, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. We love reading your thoughts, so leave a comment below and let us know which of these incredible creatures you found most fascinating. Until next time, stay curious. Welcome, bike history explorers. Today, we're diving deeper into the Ice Age to meet the extended mammoth family. You might think a mammoth is just a mammoth, but this family was incredibly diverse, with members spread across the globe, each with its own unique story. So, grab your expedition gear, because we're about to embark on a journey to meet these incredible giants. Let's start with a superstar, the one everyone pictures when they hear the word mammoth, the woolly mammoth, or asterisk mammothus. Primigenius asterisk. This is the icon of the Ice Age, and for good reason, standing about 10 to 11 feet tall at the shoulder. They were roughly the size of a modern African elephant, but much stockier. Their most famous feature, of course, was their magnificent coat. This wasn't just a bit of fur. It was a highly sophisticated, multi-layered insulation system. They had a dense, woolly undercoat for warmth, covered by long, coarse-guard hairs, some reaching over 3 feet long, that acted like a shaggy, protective overcoat, shedding snow and rain. Beneath that fur, a thick layer of fat, up to 4 inches thick, provided even more insulation against the brutal cold. Their ears were surprisingly small, and their tails were short, Both clever adaptations to minimize heat loss in freezing temperatures. Think about it. Larger ears, like those of an African elephant, are great for cooling down, but in the Arctic steppe, that would have been a major liability. The woolly mammoth was a master of energy conservation. Their habitat was a vast, cold, and dry grassland known as the Mammoth steppe. This ecosystem stretched from Spain across Eurasia, over the Bering Land Bridge, and into North America. It wasn't a barren tundra. It was a rich pasture, teeming with grasses, herbs, and sedges. To deal with this tough vegetation, woolly mammoths had specialized teeth. Their molars were made of a series of enamel plates fused together, creating a ridged, washboard-like surface, perfect for grinding down abrasive grasses. As one set of teeth wore down, a new set would move forward from the back of the jaw to replace them, a process that happened up to 6 times in their lifetime. And we can't forget those spectacular tusks, curving dramatically upwards and sometimes crossing in front of the trunk. These weren't just for show. They were multi-purpose tools. Mammoths used them to clear snow to find food, to defend against predators like cave lions and saber-toothed cats, and likely for social display to attract mates or establish dominance. We know they used them for foraging because many fossilized tusks show wear patterns, flattened and polished on one side from constantly sweeping snow aside. They were the ultimate ice-aged snowplow. Now, let's travel a bit further south, to a warmer part of Ice Age North America, to meet a different branch of the family. The Columbian mammoth, Mammuthus columbi. If the woolly mammoth was the sturdy, Arctic-adapted specialist, the Columbian mammoth was its larger, more temperate climate cousin. These were true giants. A large male could stand over 13 feet tall at the shoulder and weigh more than 10 tons. That is significantly larger than the woolly mammoth, and one of the largest elephant relatives to have ever lived, living in a warmer environment from the northern United States down to Mexico. The Columbian mammoth didn't need the thick, shaggy coat of its northern relative. While it likely had some hair, it would have been much sparser, more like the hair on modern Asian elephants. Its body was built for a different landscape. Instead of the cold steppe, it roamed open woodlands, savannas, and grasslands. Its diet was also more varied, including not just grasses, but also shrubs, fruits, and the foliage of trees. Their tusks were also immense, often even larger and more widely spiraled than those of the woolly mammoth. Imagine seeing one of these giants strolling through what is now California or Texas. It would have been an awe-inspiring sight. Interestingly, the territories of the woolly and Columbian mammoths sometimes overlapped, particularly in areas like the northern Great Plains. Recent genetic studies have revealed something fascinating. They interbred where they met. This created hybrid populations, blending the traits of the cold-adapted woolies with the massive Columbian mammoths. The family tree is more of a tangled web than a straight line. But the mammoth family story doesn't end with these two giants. Evolution is a wonderfully creative process, and when mammoths found themselves isolated on islands, something extraordinary happened. They shrank. This phenomenon is called insular dwarfism. On islands with limited food resources and fewer large predators, a smaller body size becomes a huge evolutionary advantage. It requires less food to survive and allows for a larger population to be sustained. Let's visit the Chana Islands off the coast of California. Here lived the pygmy mammoth, Mammuthus exilis. These were direct descendants of the colossal Columbian mammoths that swam to the islands from the mainland. Over thousands of years, they evolved to be just 5 to 6 feet tall at the shoulder and weighed only about a ton. They were like miniature, perfectly formed versions of their mainland ancestors. You could have looked one right in the eye. A similar story unfolded on Wrangel Island, a remote Arctic outpost off the coast of Siberia. Here, a population of woolly mammoths became isolated as sea levels rose after the last ice age. While mammoths on the mainland went extinct around 10,000 years ago, this island population survived for thousands of years longer. They also became smaller, evolving into a dwarf form of the woolly mammoth. In fact, these Wrangel Island mammoths were the very last of their kind, surviving until about 4,000 years ago. Think about that while the Great Pyramids were being built in Egypt. A herd of dwarf woolly mammoths was still roaming a remote Arctic island. From the Arctic conquering woolly mammoth to the colossal Columbian mammoth and the fascinating island dwarfs, the mammoth family shows us the incredible power of adaptation. Each species was finely tuned to its environment, whether it was a frozen steppe, a temperate savanna, or a tiny island. They weren't just one animal. They were a diverse dynasty of giants that dominated the Pleistocene world. Thank you so much for joining me on this mammoth family reunion. It's incredible to think about the variety and adaptability of these magnificent animals. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more adventures. To our Planet S amazing past. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next chapter. See you next time. Welcome back to our journey into the Ice Age. Today, we step back in time to spend a day with one of the era's most magnificent giants, the woolly mammoth. This is Chapter 4, A Day in the Life. As the first light of dawn stretches across the vast frozen steppe, our mammoth matriarch stirs. She's the leader of a small family group, a herd bound by deep social ties. Her massive body, insulated by a thick undercoat and long, shaggy hair, has kept her warm through the frigid night. With a low, resonant rumble, a sound too deep for human ears to fully perceive, she signals the start of a new day. The rest of the herd, including several younger mammoths and a tiny, playful calf, begins to stir, their breath turning to mist in the crisp morning air. Their first priority is food. A fully grown mammoth needs to consume hundreds of pounds of vegetation every single day to fuel its enormous body. This is a constant, driving force in their lives. The matriarch, guided by a memory passed down through generations, leads her family towards a sheltered river valley. Here, the snow is thinner, and the frozen ground gives way to a buffet of grasses, sedges, and willow shrubs. Using their incredible tusks, which can grow up to 15 feet long, they sweep aside the snow like giant, curved snow. These tusks are not just for show. They are essential survival tools. Once the vegetation is exposed, they use their flexible, muscular trunks. With the two finger-like projections at the tip, a mammoth's trunk is as dexterous as a human hand. They can delicately pluck a single blade of grass or rip up an entire clump of hardy tundra herbs. For the next several hours, the only sounds are the rhythmic tearing of plants and the deep, contented grinding of massive molars. The young calf stays close to its mother's side, nestled between her colossal legs for protection and warmth. It tries to mimic the adults, clumsily grabbing at plants with its still developing trunk, occasionally tripping over its own feet. The older juveniles are a bit more boisterous, engaging in mock battles, pushing each other with their foreheads and clashing their smaller, budding tusks. These games are not just for fun. They are crucial practice for the challenges they will face as adults, establishing social bonds and learning the skills of combat and defense. As the sun climbs higher, the herd moves on. They don't stay in one place for long, to avoid overgrazing and to stay one step ahead of predators. Their journey is slow but steady, a ponderous march across the plains. Their massive, padded feet act like snowshoes, distributing their immense weight and preventing them from sinking into the soft ground or snow. They travel in a single file, the experienced matriarch at the front, with the vulnerable young protected in the middle of the column. Communication is constant, though much of it is silent to us. Mammoths, much like modern elephants, used a complex language of low frequency, and these rumbles could travel for miles across the open landscape, carrying messages of location, danger, or readiness to mate. Imagine a network of invisible signals connecting herds across the horizon, a secret conversation vibrating through the very ground they walked on. They also used more obvious signals, a flap of the ears, a swish of the tail, or a loud, trumpeting call that would echo for miles, a clear warning to any potential threat. And threats were ever present. A pack of steppe wolves might shadow the herd, looking for any sign of weakness, or a scimitar-toothed cat could be lurking in ambush. The matriarch is ever vigilant, her small eyes constantly scanning, her large ears swiveling to catch the faintest sound. If danger is detected, the herd instantly forms a defensive circle, a fortress of ivory and flesh, with the calves safely in the center. The adults would face outwards, brandishing their tusks, and letting out intimidating trumpets. A united front that few predators would dare to challenge. Midday brings a time for rest and social bonding. The herd finds a spot sheltered from the relentless wind. Here, they engage in one of their most important rituals: dusting. Using their trunks, they spray themselves and each other with dry soil and dust. This isn't just about getting dirty, it's a vital form of skin care. The dust acts as a natural insect repellent and sunscreen, protecting their thick hides from biting flies and the surprisingly strong Ice Age sun. It's also a social activity, reinforcing bonds as they dust each other in hard-to-reach places. The little calf gets a thorough dusting from its mother, squealing with what looks like delight. As the afternoon wears on, the search for food resumes. They might travel to a mineral lick, a special place where the soil is rich in essential salts and minerals not found in their usual plant diet. These licks were vital health spas for mammoths, and knowledge of their locations was precious information held by the matriarch. Here, herds might mingle, providing opportunities for young males to interact with other families and for genetic exchange to occur. As dusk begins to settle, casting long shadows across the snow, the day's journey nears its end. The matriarch guides her family to a familiar, sheltered location to rest for the night. The air grows cold again, and the herd clusters together for warmth. The calf, exhausted from a day of walking and playing, collapses into a fuzzy heap against its mother. The life of a mammoth was a constant cycle of searching for food, caring for family, and navigating the dangers of a harsh and unforgiving world. It was a life of immense power, but also one of deep social connection and surprising tenderness. As darkness falls over the Ice Age plains and our mammoth family settles in, a final, low rumble of reassurance passes between them, a quiet promise of safety through the long, cold night. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey into the past. If you're as fascinated by the life of the woolly mammoth as we are, please hit that like button and subscribe for more chapters from our prehistoric world. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our journey through time. Today, in Chapter 5, we're going to explore a period of incredible transformation on our planet. The last Ice Age. Let's take a calm, quiet journey back thousands of years to understand how a colder world sculpted the very land we live on today. Imagine the Earth, but not as we know it. Picture a world where the climate has cooled significantly. This wasn't just a few cold winters. It was a long-term drop in global temperatures that lasted for thousands of years. This period is what we call an Ice Age. Now, there have been many Ice Ages in Earth's history, but we're going to focus on the most recent one, which peaked around 20,000 years ago. So, what happens when the world gets that cold for that long? Snowfall in the northern latitudes begins to accumulate year after year. Normally, summer warmth melts the winter snow, but during the Ice Age, the summers weren't warm enough. So, the snow just kept piling up, season after season, century after century. As this snowpack grew deeper, its own immense weight started to compress the layers at the bottom. This incredible pressure transformed the fluffy snow into dense, hard ice. Over thousands of years, these accumulations of ice grew into colossal masses we call glaciers. These weren't just small mountain glaciers. They were continent-spanning ice sheets, miles thick in some places. Think of it like a giant, slow-moving river of ice. The Laurentide ice sheet, for example, was a monstrous glacier that covered most of Canada and a large portion of the northern United States. Its sheer size is almost impossible to comprehend. It was a true giant, and its movement, though incredibly slow, had the power to reshape continents. As these massive glaciers began to spread outwards from their centers, they acted like gigantic bulldozers. Anything in their path, soil, rock, trees, entire hills, was scraped up and carried along. The immense weight of the ice carved deep valleys, flattened landscapes, and ground solid bedrock into fine powder. The land that would one day become North America was almost unrecognizable. A vast sheet of ice stretched from the Arctic all the way down to what is now New York City, Chicago, and Seattle. This ice was a dominant force, dictating the shape of the land beneath it. But the glaciers weren't the only major feature of this icy world. Beyond the edge of the ice sheets, the ground itself was frozen solid, a condition we call Permafrost. This is land that remains at or below freezing for at least 2 consecutive years. During the Ice Age, vast stretches of North America, even areas not covered by glaciers, were locked in this deep freeze. Permafrost created a unique and barren landscape. Trees struggled to grow because their roots couldn't penetrate the frozen soil. The ground was often a mix of ice, soil, and rock, creating a stark, tundra-like environment where only the hardiest grasses, mosses, and shrubs could survive. This was the world that early humans and iconic Ice Age animals like the woolly mammoth and saber-toothed cat had to navigate. So, we have these massive ice sheets to the north, and a vast expanse of frozen tundra to the south. This entire system was driven by a global climate that was significantly colder and drier than today. Sea levels were also much lower by as much as 400 feet because so much of the Earth's water was locked up in the glaciers. This exposed vast areas of the continental shelf, creating land bridges that connected continents. The most famous of these is the Bering Land Bridge, which connected Asia and North America, allowing for the migration of animals and people. Then, around 18,000 years ago, the climate began to shift again. The Earth's orbit and tilt changed ever so slightly, leading to warmer summers in the northern hemisphere. This was the beginning of the end for the great ice sheets. The process was slow, a gradual retreat that would take thousands of years. As the glaciers started to melt, their true impact on the landscape was revealed. Remember all that rock and debris the glaciers had scraped up? As the ice melted, it dropped everything it was carrying. This created many of the geological features we see today. Long Island in New York, for example, is a terminal moraine, massive ridge of sediment deposited at the southernmost edge of the Laurentide ice sheet. The melting ice also released an unimaginable amount of water. This meltwater carved new river channels and filled in basins to create countless lakes. The Great Lakes, the largest group of freshwater lakes on Earth, are a direct legacy of the retreating glaciers. Their massive basins were scoured out by the ice and then filled to the brim with its meltwater. All across the northern United States and Canada, the thousands of smaller lakes that dot the landscape were formed in a similar way. The land itself also began to change. Freed from the crushing weight of the ice, the Earth's crust slowly started to rebound, a process called isostatic adjustment that is still happening today in places like the Hudson Bay region. The end of the Ice Age wasn't just about melting ice. It was a complete reshaping of the environment. As temperatures rose, forests began to reclaim the barren tundra. The landscapes we recognize today, the rolling hills of the Midwest, the lake-filled Canadian Shield, the deep fjords of the coastlines were all sculpted and defined by the immense power of the Ice Age. So, when you look at a map of North America, or drive through a landscape carved with deep valleys and scattered with lakes, remember the story written into the land itself. It's a story of a colder time, of colossal glaciers and frozen ground, and of a profound climate shift that gave us the world we know. The Ice Age may be over, but its fingerprints are everywhere. A silent testament to the incredible power of nature to shape our planet. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. I hope this gives you a new appreciation for the incredible history beneath our feet. If you enjoyed this chapter, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more explorations into our world's amazing past. We'll see you next time. Upbeat, adventurous music fades slightly to the background. Imagine a world, not of skyscrapers and highways, but of vast, wind-swept grasslands stretching as far as the eye can see. This is North America, 20,000 years ago, during the last Ice Age, and thundering across this prehistoric landscape is a creature of immense power and majesty, the Columbian mammoth. Today, we're joining a herd on their epic journey, an ancient pilgrimage etched into their very DNA. Welcome to the Great Migration. Our story begins in the rolling plains of what we now call Kansas. The air is growing colder, the days shorter. A subtle shift in the wind, a change in the light. These are the signals. An ancient, powerful instinct awakens within the matriarch, the wise and experienced leader of the herd. She lifts her massive head, her long, curved tusks glinting in the autumn sun. It's time. With a low, rumbling call that vibrates through the ground. She signals the start of their journey north. The herd is a moving fortress, a tight-knit family of dozens. Towering bulls with tusks over 13 feet long guard the flanks, their eyes ever watchful for danger. Into center, protected on all sides, are the mothers and their calves. These youngsters, fuzzy and curious, stick close to their mother's legs, learning the rhythms of the herd and the secrets of the trail. This journey isn't just about finding food. It's a living tradition, passed down from one generation to the next. The routes they follow were carved by their ancestors over thousands of years. How do they navigate this immense, featureless landscape? It's a remarkable combination of senses and memory. The matriarch leads the way, her mind a map of ancient riverbeds, hidden waterholes, and safe mountain passes. She remembers the scent of specific plants that signal a freshwater spring is near. She can feel subtle changes in the ground's vibration, telling her where the earth is firm and where it might be treacherous bog. It's an intuition honed over a lifetime of travel, a deep connection to the land that we can barely comprehend today. Their primary goal is finding water. A single adult mammoth could drink over 50 gallons a day. They use their incredible sense of smell, able to detect the scent of water from miles away. When they arrive at a dry riverbed, they don't give up. Using their powerful tusks and broad, padded feet, they dig. They excavate deep into the sandy soil, creating what are known as mammoth wells. These wells not only quench their own thirst, but also provide a vital water source for countless other animals, horses, bison, and even the fearsome saber-toothed cats that share their world. In this way, the mammoths are ecosystem engineers, shaping the very world they live in. As they trek across modern-day Nebraska, the landscape changes. The grasslands give way to stands of spruce and pine. Food is plentiful for now. They are colossal herbivores, eating up to 700 pounds of vegetation every single day. Using their flexible, finger-like trunks, they strip leaves from branches, pull up vast quantities of grass, and delicately pluck tasty flowers. Their massive molars, ridged like washboards, grind down even the toughest plant material. They are eating machines, constantly fueling their enormous bodies for the long road ahead. But the journey is filled with peril. A sudden river crossing can be treacherous. The current is strong, and a misstep could be disastrous, especially for the young cat. The matriarch carefully chooses the crossing point, her experience guiding the herd to the safest shallows. The adults form a living barrier, shielding the calves from the force of the water as they paddle furiously to the other side. Every successful crossing is a victory, a testament to their strength and cooperation. And they are not alone. Lurking in the shadows of the scattered woodlands are predators. A pack of dire wolves, larger and more powerful than modern wolves, watches the herd, looking for any sign of weakness. A lone, old bull, or a calf that strays too far from its mother. But attacking a mammoth herd is a risky business. The bulls form a defensive circle, a wall of tusks and muscle. Their deafening roars and intimidating charges are usually enough to send even the bravest predators packing. The safety of the herd is paramount. Now, winter descends. The world is transformed into a vast expanse of white. The temperature plummets, and a bitter wind howls across the plains. Surviving the Ice Age winter is the ultimate test. The mammoth's secret weapon is their coat. It's not just a long, shaggy outer hair you might imagine. Beneath that is a dense, woolly undercoat, providing incredible insulation. They also have a thick layer of body fat, further protecting them from the lethal cold. Food becomes scarce. The lush grasses are buried under feet of snow. This is where their magnificent tusks come into play again. They are not just for defense or digging for water. They are snow plows. Sweeping their heads from side to side, they clear vast patches of snow, exposing the dried grasses and hardy shrubs beneath. This allows the entire herd to feed, scraping by until the spring thaw. They huddle together for warmth during blizzards, the massive bodies of the adults creating a warm, protective shelter for the calves. In their midst, the calves born during this harsh season face the greatest challenge. Their survival depends entirely on the herd's collective effort. Mothers provide warm, nutritious milk, and the other females, the aunties, help protect and guide the newborns. It's a beautiful display of social bonding and communal care, ensuring the next generation of giants will live to see the spring. Finally, after months of hardship, a change. The sun feels a little warmer. The ice on the edges of the frozen rivers begins to crack. Green shoots of grass poke through the melting snow. The great migration is nearing its end. They have reached their northern feeding grounds, a land now bursting with new life. The matriarch lets out another low rumble, but this one is different. It's a call of arrival, of relief, of triumph. They have traveled hundreds of miles, faced predators, crossed raging rivers, and endured the biting cold of an Ice Age winter. They survived, not just through sheer size and strength, but through intelligence, memory, and an unbreakable social bond. This journey is the pulse of their existence, a cycle of movement and survival that has defined their species for millennia. As we watch this family of giants graze peacefully in the spring sunshine, we are reminded of a wild and magnificent world that has long since vanished. But their legacy lives on, in the very shape of the land they engineered and in the fossils that tell their incredible story. They were more than just colossal beasts. They were intelligent, social, and resilient beings, the true kings of the Ice Age. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey back in time. If you are fascinated by the epic life of the Columbian mammoth, please hit that like button and subscribe for more adventures into our planet's incredible past. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our journey into the Ice Age. In our last chapter, we delved deep into the world of the magnificent woolly mammoth. But they weren't alone out there on the vast, windswept plains. Imagine a world teeming with giants, a prehistoric community where every day was a struggle for survival. Today, we're meeting the neighbors, the other incredible megafauna that shared this ancient landscape. This is Chapter 7, Neighbors on the Plains. First up, let's talk about the mammoth's famous cousin, the mastodon. Now, you might think mammoth, mastodon, same thing. Right. Not quite. While they were both massive, elephant-like creatures, they were more like distant relatives with different lifestyles. Picture the mastodon as the forest dweller. They were a bit shorter and stockier than mammoths, with flatter, less domed heads. Their tusks were also different, straighter, and less curved. The real giveaway, though, was in their teeth. Mastodon teeth had cone-shaped cusps, perfect for crushing and grinding tough vegetation like twigs, leaves, and branches from trees and shrubs. This tells us they preferred woodlands and marshy forests, while mammoths, with their ridged, washboard-like molars, were specialized grazers, roaming the open grasslands. So, while they might have occasionally crossed paths at the edge of the woods, they largely kept to their own preferred dining spots. It was a classic case of niche partitioning, nature's way of allowing similar species to coexist without directly competing for the exact same food. One ruled the plains, the other, the forests. Now, let's move out of the woods and back onto the open steppe, where a true giant of the grasslands grazed. We're not talking about mammoths this time, but about the giant bison, also known as bison the tooth. Forget the American bison you see today. This ancestor was a whole different beast. It was one of the largest bovine species to have ever lived. Imagine a bison standing over 8 feet tall at the shoulder, weighing well over 2 tons. And its horns, they were spectacular. Spanning up to 7 feet from tip to tip, these colossal horns were likely used for defense against the formidable predators of the Ice Age and for display, perhaps to impress mates or intimidate rivals. Unlike modern bison that form massive herds, it's thought that the giant bison may have lived in smaller groups. Given their immense size and the resources they would have required, can you picture it? A small family of these titans, their massive forms silhouetted against the setting sun, their breath misting in the cold air. They were the undisputed kings of the grazers on these ancient plains, a powerful and awe-inspiring presence in this prehistoric community. Of course, where there are giant herbivores, there are bound to be giant predators, and the Ice Age had some of the most terrifying hunters the world has ever known. Let's just start with a creature that would make even a grizzly bear look small. The short-faced bear, or Arctitis. This was not a bear you'd want to encounter. Standing on its hind legs, It could reach a staggering 12 feet tall, and on all fours, it was tall enough to look an adult human in the eye. It earned its name from its distinctively short, broad snout. Unlike the long snouts of modern bears used for foraging, this suggested something different. Its long, powerful legs were built for speed and endurance, not for ambling through forests. Scientists believe the short-faced bear was a truly formidable predator, capable of running down prey over long distances across the open plains. It might have also been an intimidating kleptoparasita, fancy term for a professional thief. With its immense size, it could easily scare off other predators, like packs of dire wolves or even a saber-toothed cat, to steal their hard-earned kills. It was the ultimate opportunist, a titan among predators that dominated the food chain through sheer size, power, and a fearsome presence. But the short-faced bear wasn't the only top predator stalking the Ice Age plains. Hunting in the shadows and across the open steppe was a name that has become legendary to dire wolf. Made famous in fiction, the real dire wolf, Canis dirus, was even more impressive. It wasn't a fantastical beast, but a very real and very successful predator that lived alongside and competed with saber-toothed cats and short-faced bears. Physically, the dire wolf was about 25% heavier than the largest gray wolves today. It was a robust, powerfully built canine with a broader head, stronger jaws, and larger teeth. This wasn't a nimble, slender wolf. It was a bone-crushing powerhouse. Its teeth were perfectly adapted for delivering deep, shearing bites and cracking the bones of its prey to get at the nutritious marrow inside. They were social hunters, living and hunting in packs, just like modern wolves. A pack of dire wolves would have been an incredibly effective and terrifying force on the plains. Imagine them working together, a coordinated unit of muscle and teeth, capable of taking down large prey like horses, camels, and even young or weakened bison. They were masters of the pack hunt, a tight-knit community of predators that carved out a living through cooperation and relentless pursuit. The growls and howls of a dire wolf pack echoing across the frozen landscape would have been a chilling, unforgettable sound of the Ice Age night. So, let's step back and look at the whole picture. The Ice Age plains were not an empty wasteland. They were a vibrant, dynamic, and dangerous ecosystem, a community of giants locked in an eternal dance of life and death. You had the browsers like the mastodons in the woodlands, and the supergrazers like the woolly mammoths and giant bison dominating the grasslands. And weaving between them all were the predators, the lone, intimidating force of the short-faced bear, capable of stealing a meal from anyone. The coordinated strategy, packs of dire wolves, a constant threat to the herds. And let's not forget others we've discussed, like the saber-toothed cat, with its specialized killing technique. Each animal had its own role, its own strategy for survival. They were neighbors, rivals, predators, and prey. The mastodons browsing shaped the forests, the bisons grazing maintained the grasslands, and the predators ensured that only the strong and the smart survived, driving the evolution of these magnificent beasts. This complex web of interactions is what made the Ice Age so fascinating. It was a complete, functioning world, filled with creatures that were perfectly adapted to its challenges. Understanding this community helps us appreciate not just the mammoth, but the entire epoch it represents. A time of giants, a time of struggle, and a time of incredible natural wonder. Thank you for joining me on this journey back in time to meet the neighbors on the plains. It's incredible to think about this lost world and the magnificent creatures that called it home. What an amazing community it must have been. If you enjoyed this chapter, please give this video a thumbs up. And do I hint you forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do want to miss our next adventure into the Ice Age. See you next time. Welcome back to our journey through the echoes of time. Today, we step into a world cloaked in ice, a world of giants, as we explore Chapter 8, Mammoths and Early Humans. Imagine, if you will, a continent untouched by modern civilization. A land we now call North America, but thousands of years ago, it was a vast, wild frontier. Across a land bridge, now submerged beneath the Bering Strait, the first people ventured. These were not conquerors in shining armor, but small, resilient family groups, explorers, driven by necessity and curiosity. They were the Paleo-Indians, and they were stepping into a world that would test their every skill. The air was colder, the winds sharper, and the landscape was dominated by creatures of immense scale. And the most magnificent of all was the mammoth. Picture it. A creature towering over 13 feet at the shoulder, with curving tusks that could span 16 feet from tip to tip. Its body was covered in a thick, shaggy coat of hair, an adaptation to the brutal cold of the Ice Age. For the newly arrived humans, encountering a mammoth for the first time must have been an awe-inspiring, perhaps terrifying, experience. These weren't just animals. They were walking mountains, the undisputed kings of this frozen kingdom. The relationship that developed between Paleo-Indians and mammoths was complex, a delicate dance of survival, respect, and necessity. It wasn't a simple story of hunter and prey. It was much, much deeper. For many groups, the mammoth was a vital resource. A single successful hunt could sustain a family or even an entire band for weeks, sometimes months. Think about the sheer challenge. How could a small group of people, armed only with stone-tipped spears, possibly take down such a colossal beast? It required incredible ingenuity, teamwork, and a profound understanding of the animal's behavior. They couldn't rely on brute force. They had to use their intelligence. Archaeological evidence, like the famous Clovis points beautifully crafted, fluted spearheads found across North America tells us they were highly skilled hunters. These points were sharp, durable, and designed for deep penetration, a testament to their creator's craftsmanship. But the weapon was only part of the equation. The hunt itself was a masterclass in strategy. Hunters would likely have targeted the young, the old, or an individual separated from the herd. They might have used the landscape to their advantage, driving a mammoth into a bog or a narrow ravine where its movement was restricted. This wasn't a chaotic frenzy. It was a carefully coordinated effort, with each member of the hunting party playing a crucial role. It demanded patience, courage, and a deep, shared trust. The risks were enormous. A cornered, wounded mammoth was one of the most dangerous forces in nature. But a successful hunt was transformative. Every part of the mammoth was used. The meat provided a massive supply of protein and fat, crucial for surviving the harsh climate. The thick hide was used for clothing, blankets, and to construct shelters, offering vital protection from the relentless cold. The massive bones and tusks were not discarded. They were a raw material for creation. Imagine a shelter, its framework built from the immense curved tusks and massive leg bones of a mammoth, covered with stretched hides. Inside, a fire crackles, and the family is safe from the howling wind. This wasn't just a home, it was a monument to their success, a structure built from the very giant they had overcome. The bones were also carved into tools, needles for sewing, and even art. The ivory from the tusks was shaped into intricate figurines, beads, and personal ornaments. These weren't just objects. They were expressions of creativity and culture, born from the body of this great beast. Yet, the story doesn't end with the hunt. The relationship was not purely one of predator and prey. There was also a profound sense of reverence and respect. For many early cultures, the mammoth was more than just a source of food and materials. It was a powerful spiritual symbol. It represented strength, endurance, and the untamable spirit of the wild. Think about it. In a world full of dangers, the mammoth was the ultimate power. To hunt it was to engage with that power directly. To honor it was to acknowledge its place in the cosmos, and to seek its blessing. We find hints of this spiritual connection in the art they left behind. Carvings and perhaps even cave paintings, though rare in North America, suggest that the mammoth occupied a central place in their worldview. These weren't just depictions of a hunt. They may have been part of rituals, stories told around the fire, or ways of passing knowledge from one generation to the next. They might have been a way of honoring the mammoth's spirit, of asking for forgiveness for taking its life, and of ensuring that the herds would remain strong for future generations. The act of hunting was likely steeped in ceremony, a sacred undertaking that connected the physical and spiritual worlds. The mammoth was a provider, yes, but it was also a spirit guide, a teacher, and a central figure in their mythology. The encounter between Paleo-Indians and mammoths represents a defining chapter in the human story. It's a tale of adaptation, of human ingenuity in the face of incredible challenges. It shows how our ancestors not only survived in a harsh new world, but thrived, developing sophisticated tools, complex social strategies, and rich cultural traditions. And it's a story tinged with sadness. As the Ice Age drew to a close, the climate warmed, and the great ice sheets retreated. The mammoths' world began to disappear. Their grassy steppe habitat gave way to forests. The combination of this rapid climate change and the pressure from highly efficient human hunters proved too much. The last of the great mammoths vanished from the continent, leaving behind only their mighty bones and the echoes of their time on Earth. Their extinction marked the end of an era, but their legacy endured. They live on in the archaeological record, in the tools and shelters made from their bodies, and in the cultural memory of their human contemporaries. They shaped the lives of the first Americans in profound ways, serving as both their greatest challenge and their greatest resource. Looking at a Clovis point, or the fossilized bone of a mammoth, we are looking at a story of courage, respect, and the unbreakable bond between humanity and the natural world. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. I hope it gave you a new appreciation for the incredible lives of North America as first peoples and the magnificent giants they walked alongside. If you enjoyed this exploration, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more stories from our distant past. We'll see you next time. Hello history buffs, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're embarking on an incredible journey back in time, over 13,000 years ago, to meet some of the earliest well-documented inhabitants of the Americas. The Clovis people. War, where, te. How did they survive in a world filled with Ice Age giants? The answers lie buried in the earth, in a remarkable connection between stone and bone. Picture this. It's 1929, near the town of Clovis, New Mexico. Archaeologists are carefully excavating the dusty landscape when they make a find that will rewrite history. Lying amongst the colossal fossilized bones of a mammoth are intricately crafted stone spear points. These weren't just any spear points, they were distinctive, with a characteristic channel, or flute, carved into the base. This was the birth of the Clovis point, and it was the first solid proof that early humans had hunted these massive beasts. Since that initial discovery, dozens of similar sites have been uncovered across North America, from Arizona to Florida. These are known as kill sites, and they all tell a similar, dramatic story. You find the remains of megafauna mammoths, mastodons, giant bison, and right there with them, you find these signature Clovis points. Sometimes they're lodged right between the ribs of the animal, a frozen moment of a prehistoric hunt. It's like a Stone Age crime scene, and the Clovis people left their calling card. So, what do these finds really tell us? First, it tells us that the Clovis people were master craftsmen. Making a Clovis point is incredibly difficult. It requires a deep understanding of flint knapping, the art of shaping stone. You have to select the right material, like chert or obsidian, and then skillfully strike it to chip away flakes. The final, crucial step was creating that flute. This was a high-risk, high-reward move. One wrong strike, and the entire point could shatter after hours of work. Why go to such trouble? Most archaeologists believe the flute was designed to help secure the point tightly to a wooden spear shaft, creating a devastatingly effective weapon. These weren't just tools, they were technological marvels of their time. But the story gets even more fascinating when you think about what it takes to hunt a mammoth. We were talking about an animal that could stand over 13 feet tall at the shoulder and weigh more than 10 tons. It was a walking mountain of muscle, armed with massive tusks. One person with a spear, no matter how well made, stood little chance. This wasn't a solo mission. This is where the evidence points to something truly profound about Clovis society: cooperation. Hunting a mammoth would have required a group of skilled hunters working together with a sophisticated plan. Think about the strategy involved. They couldn't just run up to a mammoth head-on. Perhaps they used the landscape to their advantage, driving the animal into a swamp or a narrow ravine where it would be trapped and less mobile. Some members of the group might have created distractions, using noise and fire to confuse the animal, while others moved in for the critical strikes with their spears. This level of coordination implies communication and social organization. They needed leaders to devise the plan, hunters with specific roles, and a shared understanding of their goal. It suggests a community that could think collectively, solve complex problems, and share the risks and rewards. A single mammoth could feed a large group for weeks. The meat would provide vital protein. The hide could be used for shelter and clothing, the bones and tusks for tools and even art. This single act of hunting was a community-building event. Furthermore, the materials used to make Clovis points often came from quarries hundreds of miles away from where they were found. This indicates that these groups were highly mobile, following the herds of megafauna across the vast post-Ice Age landscape. It also suggests the existence of extensive trade networks or long-distance travel routes. A piece of obsidian found in Ohio might have originated in Wyoming. This shows a level of interconnectedness between different groups that is truly staggering for the time. They weren't isolated bands. They were part of a larger, continent-spanning culture. However, the world of the Clovis people didn't last forever. Around 12,900 years ago, both the Clovis culture and the megafauna they hunted seemed to disappear from the archaeological record quite abruptly. This is one of the biggest debates in archaeology. One theory, known as the overkill hypothesis, suggests that their hunting prowess was so effective that they simply hunted the mammoths and other large animals to extinction. Once their primary food source was gone, their culture collapsed. Another compelling theory involves a dramatic climate event known as the Younger Dryas. The idea is that a comet or asteroid may have exploded over North America, triggering massive wildfires, a rapid drop in temperature, and widespread ecological collapse. This impact hypothesis would have decimated both animal and human populations, leading to the end of the Clovis era. The debate is far from settled, and new discoveries are constantly adding new pieces to the puzzle. But what remains undeniable is the legacy of the Clovis people. Those simple stone points, found nestled beside the bones of giants, open a window into a lost world. They tell a story not just of survival, but of ingenuity, collaboration, and the remarkable ability of our ancestors to thrive in one of the most challenging environments in Earth's history. They show us that from our earliest days, cooperation and community have been the keys to our success as a species. What do you think happened to the Clovis people? The overkill hypothesis, or a cosmic catastrophe? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. It's a fascinating mystery to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this archaeological adventure today. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you won't miss our next exploration. Until next time, stay curious. Welcome back to our journey into the Ice Age. Today, we re-dive in deep into the incredible ingenuity of our ancestors and their profound relationship with the colossal mammoths. It wasn't just about the hunt. It was about survival, innovation, and even art. This is Chapter 10, Tools, Bones, and Art. Imagine the biting winds of the Pleistocene steppe. A fire crackles, but what surrounds it? Not a cave, but a structure built from the very giants that roamed this land. Archaeologists have unearthed astounding evidence of mammoth bone huts, some of the earliest examples of human-made architecture. In places like Mazirik in modern-day Ukraine, entire settlements were constructed using these massive bones. Think about the engineering involved. Huge, curving tusks formed arched doorways. Interlocking mandibles, or jawbones, created sturdy, foundational walls. Skulls, vertebrae, and pelvic bones were stacked and arranged in complex patterns, forming circular dwellings that could house multiple families. These weren't just simple shelters. They were sophisticated structures, a testament to the builders' deep understanding of their materials. The bones were heavy, durable, and provided excellent insulation when covered with animal hides. It was a brilliant solution to the problem of finding shelter in a largely treeless landscape. They didn't just find a home. They built one from the world around them. But the use of mammoth remains didn't stop at construction. Every part of the mammoth was a precious resource. Their thick hides, once scraped and cured, became warm clothing, blankets, and coverings for their bone huts. The sinews were processed into strong cordage, perfect for tying tools together or stringing boughs. Even the fat was rendered down for fuel, providing light and heat through the long, dark Ice Age nights. Nothing was wasted. This complete utilization shows a level of resourcefulness that is truly awe-inspiring. The bones themselves were the raw material for an entire toolkit. Large bones could be shattered to create sharp-edged choppers and scrapers, essential for butchering carcasses and preparing hides. Smaller, more delicate bone fragments were meticulously shaped into fine needles with tiny, drilled eyes. These weren't just functional. They revolutionized daily life, allowing for the creation of tailored, layered clothing that was crucial for surviving the extreme cold. Awls for punching holes in leather, spear points for hunting, and even shovels, crafted from large shoulder blades, have all been found at ancient sites. The mammoth was, in essence, a walking hardware store for Ice Age people. Now, let's move beyond the practical and into the realm of the symbolic. This is where the story gets truly fascinating. Among the tools and bones, archaeologists have discovered objects that hint at a deeper, spiritual connection to these magnificent beasts. Small, portable sculptures of mammoths, carved with incredible detail from ivory and bone, have been found across Eurasia. These aren't just crude representations. They are works of art, capturing the essence and power of the animal. One of the most famous examples is the Lion Man figurine from Germany, carved from mammoth ivory. While it's a hybrid creature, its material source speaks volumes. In caves from France to Siberia, we see engravings and paintings of mammoths on the walls. These weren't just doodles. They were often located in deep, hard-to-reach chambers, suggesting they were part of important rituals or ceremonies. Why go to such lengths? Perhaps these images were used in shamanic practices to connect with the spirit of the mammoth, to ensure a successful hunt, or to honor its life-giving sacrifice. Even the bone huts themselves might have held symbolic meaning. The careful arrangement of skulls and tusks, often pointing in specific directions, could have been linked to cosmological beliefs or rituals. At one site, a mammoth skull was found painted with red ochre, a pigment often associated with life, blood, and ceremony in prehistoric cultures. Another fascinating discovery is a drum-like instrument made from a painted mammoth skull, which would have created booming sounds when struck. Imagine the scene: a firelit bone hut, the air filled with the resonant sound of a mammoth skull drum, and walls adorned with carvings. It's a powerful image of a world rich with symbolism. These carvings and symbols suggest that the mammoth was more than just a source of food and materials. It was a central figure in the mythology and worldview of Ice Age peoples. It represented strength, endurance, and the very essence of the wild world they inhabited. The mammoth was a powerful spiritual ally, a creature to be respected, honored, and remembered through art and ritual. This intimate connection, from building homes with their bones to carving their likeness in ivory, a relationship far more complex than that of a simple hunter and prey. It was a symbiotic existence where humanity and megafauna were deeply intertwined. Our ancestors didn't just live alongside mammoths. They lived with asterisk. Their lives and cultures shaped by the presence of these incredible giants. Their legacy is written in bone, etched in ivory, and painted on cave walls. A silent, powerful story of survival, innovation, and the dawn of human creativity. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of our ancient past. It's incredible to think about the world our ancestors built. If you found this journey as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We have so much more to uncover together. See you next time. Welcome, bike explorers of the wild. We return now to a world teetering on the cusp of change, a moment of unparalleled abundance captured in the heart of a vibrant, living landscape. This is a time of plenty, a season where life itself seems to spill over the edges of the horizon. The sun, a benevolent ruler in the high summer sky, bathes the valleys in a golden light. Its warmth coaxes the land into an explosion of green. The grasses, fed by generous spring rains, stand tall and proud, waving like an emerald ocean in the gentle breeze. Each blade is a testament to the soil's fertility, a promise of sustenance for the countless lives that depend on it. This isn't just grass. It's a buffet, a cradle, a sprawling metropolis of life stretching as far as the eye can see. Listen closely. Can you hear it? It's the sound of a world in motion, the rhythmic beat of a million hooves, a percussive symphony that shakes the very ground beneath us. Massive herds, collections of families and dynasties, pour through the valleys like a great river. They are the architects of this landscape, their movements carving paths, their grazing shaping the plains. For them, this is the season of feasting, a time to build strength and fatten up before the leaner months that lie ahead. Look at the young ones, born just a few months ago. They are a whirlwind of joyful energy, their spindly legs now strong and sure. They chase each other through the tall grass, their mock battles and playful leaps a beautiful display of innocence. They are learning the essential skills of survival under the watchful eyes of their mothers, oblivious to the grander cycles of which they are a part. For now, their world is one of security, warmth, and the endless green of the valley floor. The air itself is thick with the buzz of life. Insects dance in the sunbeams, their iridescent wings catching the light. Birds of every color and call fill the air with their songs, darting from thicket to thicket. Busy with the duties of raising their own families, they feast on the bounty of insects, seeds, and berries, adding their own vibrant threads to this intricate tapestry of existence. Every niche, from the soil below to the sky above, is occupied, pulsing with a relentless, harmonious energy. But this abundance does not go unnoticed. Where there are herds, there are hunters. Shadows glide along the edges of the plains, their movements patient and deliberate. The predators of this land are also in their prime. They are sleek, powerful, and well-fed. But they are not wasteful. There is a deep, ancient understanding here. A balance struck over millennia. The hunt is a necessary act, a critical part of the ecosystem's health. It is a dance of life and death that ensures the strength and vitality of the herds. Observe the lioness, her golden coat a perfect camouflage in the sun-bleached grass. She is the embodiment of focus, her gaze fixed on the sprawling herd. She is not looking for just any target. Her instincts, honed by countless generations, guide her to the old, the weak, or the unwary. This is the law of the plains. The culling of the few ensures the survival of the many. Her hunt is not an act of malice, but a vital service that keeps the herd robust and prevents overgrazing, which would ultimately destroy the very land they all depend on. The pack of wild dogs, masters of coordinated strategy, move with an almost telepathic understanding. They are relentless runners, their stamina legendary. Their presence keeps the herbivores alert and constantly on the move, preventing them from lingering too long in one place and exhausting the resources. Every player in this grand drama has a role, from the largest herbivore to the most cunning carnivore. It is a system of checks and balances perfected by nature itself. As the day draws to a close, a sense of tranquility settles over the valley. The setting sun paints the sky in fiery strokes of orange, pink, and purple. The herds gather closer, finding safety in numbers as the light fades. The sounds of the day give way to the chorus of the night. The chirp of crickets, the distant call of an owl, the low rumble of a contented predator. The air cools, carrying the sweet scent of earth and clover. This is a moment of perfect harmony, a fragile peace between the hunter and the hunted, all under the silent watch of the emerging stars. This is the peak of the cycle, the season of abundance. It is a world saturated with life, a demonstration of nature's incredible capacity for creation and renewal. It is a time of feasting, of growth, of raising the next generation. But even in this paradise, there are subtle hints of what is to come. The angle of the sun is shifting ever so slightly. The nights are growing a fraction longer. The seeds of change are already sown, lying dormant beneath the surface of this lush perfection. This season is a vital storehouse of energy. Every creature, from the smallest beetle to the largest bull, is unconsciously preparing for the inevitable turn of the wheel. The fat they store, the strength they build, the young they raise. It is all an investment in the future, a buffer against the challenges that the changing seasons will bring. This period of plenty is not an endpoint, but a crucial phase in a much larger, unending story of survival and adaptation. For now, let us simply immerse ourselves in this moment, in this breathtaking spectacle of life at its most vibrant. It is a world of breathtaking beauty and brutal necessity, a harmony composed of countless individual struggles and triumphs. It's a powerful reminder that every season has its purpose, and that even in times of greatest abundance, the drums of change are always beating in the distance. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of the wild. If you've been moved by the story of these incredible animals and their world, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Your support allows us to continue bringing you these glimpses into the raw, untamed beauty of our planet. Until next time, stay curious. The world, once a familiar canvas of ice and snow, was beginning to change in ways the mammoths couldn't comprehend. A subtle warmth, almost imperceptible at first, started to creep into the air. The long, harsh winters, which they had endured for generations, seemed to lose some of their bite. The sun, once a distant, pale disk, now lingered longer in the sky, its rays carrying a new, unfamiliar intensity. For the herd, this was a season of quiet unease, a shift in the ancient rhythms of the earth that they felt deep in their bones. Initially, the milder weather felt like a blessing. The calves, born in the fleeting spring, had a slightly easier start to life. The snows melted faster, revealing the first tender shoots of grass a little earlier than usual. The matriarch, wise and experienced, led her family across the vast, open plains, her memory a map of the most fertile grazing grounds. They followed the familiar paths, the deep-worn tracks of their ancestors, expecting the usual bounty that the land had always provided. But something was different. The air itself felt thinner, drier. The grasslands, usually a lush, green carpet stretching to the horizon, now showed worrying patches of brown and yellow. The once abundant streams, fed by the slow melt of glaciers, were shrinking. Some of the smaller watering holes they relied on had been reduced to cracked mud pits. The mammoths had to travel further each day to find enough to eat and drink. The young ones tired more easily, their small legs struggling to keep up with the relentless pace set by the growing scarcity. The low, rumbling sounds of contentment that usually filled the air were replaced by more frequent, anxious calls. The very plants they depended on were changing. The nutrient-rich grasses and sedges that formed the bulk of their diet were being replaced by less palatable shrubs and different types of trees that thrived in warmer, drier conditions. The mammoths, with their specialized teeth and digestive systems, found it harder to extract the energy they needed from this new vegetation. They spent more of their waking hours foraging, their massive heads swinging from side to side, searching for the familiar tastes of their preferred foods, but often coming up empty. The matriarch felt the strain more than anyone. The responsibility of her herd weighed heavily on her. She remembered tales from her own mother, of endless green pastures and predictable seasons. Now, she was leading her family into an uncertain future. She pushed them onward, her tusks occasionally digging into the parched earth in frustration, searching for roots and tubers buried below the surface. The effort was immense, and the rewards were dwindling. The older members of the herd, their strength already waning with age, began to fall behind. The change wasn't just about food and water. The entire ecosystem was in flux. Other animals were also struggling. Some, like the woolly rhinos, faced the same challenges, their populations thinning. Others, more adaptable, moved into the mammoths' territory, creating new competition for the scarce resources. The delicate balance that had existed for millennia was being thrown into chaos. Mammoths, giants of the Ice Age, were perfectly adapted to a world that was now vanishing before their very eyes. As the seasons turned, the trend continued. Summers grew hotter and longer, and the winters, though still cold, were no longer the deep, cleansing freeze they once were. The permafrost, the permanently frozen ground that had locked in moisture and nutrients, began to thaw, turning vast areas into unstable, boggy marshes that were difficult and dangerous to cross. The mammoth's massive feet, so perfect for traversing snow-covered ground, would sink into the soft, wet earth, trapping them. The struggle was constant, a slow, grinding battle against an invisible enemy. It was on a predator they could fight off with their imposing tusks, or a rival herd they could intimidate. It was a change in the very air they breathed, the ground they walked on, and the food they ate. They were adrift in a warming world, their evolutionary advantages slowly turning into liabilities. The signs of decline were everywhere. In the thinning herds, the weary gait of the adults, and the desperate cries of the hungry calves, the matriarch would stand on a ridge, her great head lifted, sniffing the wind for any sign of rain, for the scent of a green valley hidden somewhere over the horizon. But the wind only carried the smell of dust and dry grass. She would let out a long, mournful trumpet, a call that echoed across the barren landscape, a question posed to a silent, changing world. There was no answer. The slow, inexorable march of climate change was underway, and the great mammoths, for all their power and majesty, were caught in its path. Their time was drawing to a close, not with the sudden cataclysm, but with the quiet, relentless disappearance of the world they called home. Their journey became a testament to their resilience, but also a poignant symbol of their vulnerability. Every sunrise brought the same challenge: to find enough food and water to survive another day. The bonds within the herd tightened, the adults forming protective circles around the young, sharing what little they could find. But it wasn't enough. The invisible force of a changing climate was a tide they could not turn back. The age of the great mammoths was ending, fading away like the last of the winter snow under a sun that had grown too warm. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you found this story moving, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more chapters from our planet's incredible past. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our journey through the annals of prehistory. Today, we stand at the precipice of a monumental shift, a global thaw that will reshape our world forever. This is Chapter 13. The Last Ice Retreat. Imagine a world locked in an icy embrace. For thousands of years, vast sheets of ice, kilometers thick, covered much of the northern hemisphere. But slowly, imperceptibly at first, a change began. The Earth's orbit wobbled, its tilt shifted, and the sun's warmth began to win its long war against the cold. The great meltdown had begun. This wasn't a sudden flood, but a slow, grinding retreat. Picture colossal rivers of ice, groaning and cracking under their own immense weight, day by day, year by year. The edges of the glaciers began to sweat, trickles became streams, streams became torrents, carving new paths through the frozen landscape. Massive chunks of ice, the size of mountains, would break away in catastrophic calving events, crashing into newly formed meltwater lakes with a thunderous roar that would echo 4 miles. As the ice sheets pulled back, they revealed a world scraped bare, a blank canvas of rock and gravel. But life, ever tenacious, wasted no time in reclaiming this new territory. First came the pioneer plants, mosses, lichens, and hardy grasses, their seeds carried by the wind, finding purchase in the thin, raw soil left behind by the glaciers. Their roots anchored the loose ground, their decay creating the first layers of humus, paving the way for more complex life. And what of the great megafauna, the titans of the Ice Age? For them, this great thaw was not a dawn, but a dusk. The vast, cold, arid grasslands, the mammoth steppe that had stretched from Spain to Canada, were disappearing. This was the kingdom of the woolly mammoth, a single, enormous pasture that had sustained them for millennia. As the climate warmed and became wetter, the landscape transformed. The endless plains of grass and herbs were being replaced by something new. Forests, spruce, birch, and pine trees began to march northwards, their dense canopies shading out the grasses that mammoths and other grazers depended on. Their world was literally shrinking, the pantry shelves becoming bare. The mammoths were specialists, perfectly adapted to a cold, dry world. Their thick, shaggy coats, which had been a vital asset against the biting winds, now became a liability in the warming climate. Their massive bodies, which were efficient at conserving heat, now risked overheating. The soft, boggy ground of the newly thawed earth was treacherous for their heavy frames, a stark contrast to the firm, frozen steppe they were used to. Faced with a changing menu and a warming home, the mammoth herds were under immense pressure. They began to fragment, following the retreating cold northwards and to higher altitudes. But they were fighting a losing battle. The forests advanced relentlessly, and the open plains that were their lifeblood vanished, and they weren't alone in their struggle. Another pressure was mounting, one that was adaptable, intelligent, and armed with new technologies. Early modern humans, our ancestors, were also on the move. Freed from the constraints of the ice, they spread across the newly opened landscapes. For them, a mammoth wasn't just a majestic beast. It was a walking warehouse of rhesus meat. Hides for shelter, and ivory and bones for tools and art. While climate change was undoubtedly the primary driver, pushing the mammoth populations to the brink, the pressure from human hunters likely delivered the final, decisive blow in many regions. Archaeological sites from this period are filled with evidence of sophisticated hunting techniques, spear points, cliffside traps, and butchering sites, all pointing to a growing proficiency in taking down these giants. It's a complex and debated story, a convergence of environmental change and human activity. As the last glaciers receded into the high mountains and the polar regions, the great herds of the mainland thinned and then vanished. One by one, the last of these magnificent creatures fell, their deep, rumbling calls fading from the plains of Eurasia and North America forever. Their disappearance marked the end of an era, the poignant silence falling over a world that was being reborn. Think about it. The very same warming that allowed our own civilization to flourish spelled doom for these Ice Age icons. The last holdouts were small, isolated populations on remote Arctic islands, like Wrangel Island, where they survived for a few thousand more years, a final, lonely echo of a lost world. But on the great continents, their time was over. The retreat of the ice was complete, and with it, the age of the mammoth came to a close. The world they left behind was one of greenery, of flowing rivers and dense forest, a world that looks much more familiar to us today. It's a powerful reminder that our planet is in a constant state of flux, and that even the mightiest of creatures can be rendered obsolete by the slow, inexorable march of climate change. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey back in time. It's a humbling story, and there's still so much more to uncover. If you found this chapter as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you and miss our next exploration into the past. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious. Welcome back. In our journey through the Ice Age, we've marveled at the power and majesty of the mammoths. We've seen them thrive, dominate vast continents, and shape the very earth beneath their feet. But every great story has an end. Today, we arrive at chapter 14, the final herds. This is a tale of twilight, a story of the last echoes of a mighty species fading into the silence of prehistory. The world was changing faster than any mammoth could adapt. The great ice sheets, their frozen fortresses for millennia, were in full retreat. The vast, cold grasslands, the mammoth steppe, were shrinking, replaced by dense forests and unfamiliar bogs. For the mammoths, the world was becoming a patchwork of islands not of water, but of suitable habitat. What was once a single, sprawling empire was now a series of scattered, isolated pockets. Imagine a small herd, perhaps no more than a dozen individuals, huddled together in a Siberian valley. The matriarch, old and weathered, carries the memories of a greener, more expansive world. She remembers when the horizon was dotted with hundreds of their kind, when the air vibrated with the low rumbles of 1,000 mammoths on the move. Now, the silence is deafening. The only calls that answer hers are from her own small, vulnerable family. They are the last of their line in this corner of the world. Their daily life, once a predictable cycle of migration and foraging, has become a desperate struggle. Food is scarcer. The familiar grasses and willows are harder to find. Every journey is fraught with new dangers. The soft, boggy ground, a consequence of the thawing permafrost, can trap even the strongest bull. A wrong step could mean a slow, agonizing end, and they are not alone. New predators, more agile and adapted to the changing forests, watch from the shadows. But the most formidable hunter is one they've known for generations, now growing in number and sophistication. Humans. For early humans, a single mammoth was a monumental priceless source of food, hides for shelter, and ivory for tools and art. As mammoth herds dwindled and became fragmented, they became easier targets. A coordinated group of hunters could isolate a young or weakened mammoth, driving it into a trap or overwhelming it with spears. Each successful hunt, a triumph for the human clan, was another nail in the coffin for the mammoths. They were being picked off, one by one, small herd by small herd. The genetic pool, once vast and robust, was now shrinking to a critical low. Inbreeding became inevitable, weakening the remaining few, making them more susceptible to disease and environmental stress. We have tantalizing glimpses into these final moments from the fossil record. On Wrangel Island, a remote outpost in the Arctic Ocean, a dwarf population of woolly mammoths held on for thousands of years after their mainland cousins had vanished. Think about that. While humans were building the Great Pyramids in Egypt, a small, isolated herd of mammoths still roamed this foggy, wind-swept island. They were a ghost population, a relic of a bygone era, living on borrowed time. Their world was a tiny sanctuary, a final refuge from the pressures of the mainland. But even they were not safe forever. Limited resources and a catastrophic event, perhaps a sudden climate shift or the eventual arrival of humans, finally sealed their fate. The last Wrangel Island mammoth took its final breath around 4,000 years ago, and with it, the entire species slipped from the world of the living into the realm of legend. The final call, a sound that had echoed across the planet for millions of years, faded into the Arctic wind. It wasn't a single, cataclysmic event that ended the age of mammoths. It was a slow, creeping extinction, a death by 1,000 cuts. It was the rising temperatures, the changing landscapes, the shrinking habitats, and the relentless pressure from a new, intelligent predator. Each small, isolated herd faced its own final battle, fought its own lonely struggle for survival. From the plains of North America to the steppes of Eurasia and the final sanctuary of Wrangel Island, the story was the same. A matriarch calling out, receiving no answer. A lone bull wandering a forest that no longer felt like home. A calf, the last of its generation, succumbing to a world it was not built for. The great herds that once made the ground tremble were reduced to scattered, frightened families. Then 2 individuals, and then to nothing. The grasslands fell silent. The thundering footsteps were replaced by the rustle of leaves in the new forests. The deep, rumbling calls that once defined the soundscape of the Pleistocene were gone, leaving a void in the natural world. The reign of the great mammoths was over. They left behind their bones, their tusks, and an indelible mark on the planet, and in our own human story. Their extinction serves as a profound and somber reminder of how even the mightiest can fall, and how fragile the balance of life truly is. Thank you for joining me on this poignant chapter of our journey. The story of the mammoths may have ended, but their legacy endures, teaching us valuable lessons about our planet and our place within it. If you found this story moving, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more explorations into our world's incredible past. We'll see you next time. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our journey through the prehistoric world. Today, we're venturing to a remote, frozen island in the Arctic Ocean to uncover one of the most incredible survival stories in the history of life on Earth. Imagine a world where the last mammoths walked the Earth, not tens of thousands of years ago, but while pharaohs were building the Great Pyramids in Egypt. It sounds like science fiction, but this is the true story of the Wrangel Island survivors. For millennia, woolly mammoths roamed vast stretches of the northern hemisphere. They were icons of the Ice Age, giants perfectly adapted to a frozen world. But as the planet warmed and the ice sheets retreated around 10,000 years ago, their world vanished. The vast grasslands they depended on were replaced by forests and wetlands, and human hunters, equipped with new, more effective tools, were expanding across the continents. For the vast majority of mammoths on the mainlands of Eurasia and North America, this was the end of the line. Their populations dwindled, fragmented, and eventually disappeared forever. It was a mass extinction event, and for a long time, we thought that was the end of the mammoths story. But nature is full of surprises. Far to the north, in the frigid waters of the Arctic Ocean, lies Wrangel Island. It's a harsh, isolated place, even today. But back then, as sea levels rose, this piece of high ground became a refuge. A small, isolated population of woolly mammoths found themselves cut off from the rest of the world. While their relatives on the mainland were succumbing to climate change and human pressure, this little group was embarking on a remarkable, solitary journey through time. What's so mind-blowing is just how long they held on. The last mainland mammoths vanished around 10,000 years ago. But the Wrangel Island mammoths, they survived for another 6,000 years. Let that sink in. They lived until roughly 4,000 years ago, or about 1,700 BCE. This means they were alive and well when the Great Pyramid of Giza was being constructed. They were contemporaries with the Minoan civilization on Crete and the rise of Babylon, while humans were building cities, developing, writing, and forging empires. A herd of woolly mammoths was still trudging through the snows of a remote Arctic island, completely unaware of the New World, taking shape to the south. So, how did they do it? How did this small band of survivors outlast everyone else? The key was their isolation. Wrangel Island acted as a fortress. It was too remote for early human hunters to reach easily, and its unique, cold, and dry climate preserved the grassy tundra environment that mammoths needed to survive. They had a reliable food source, and, crucially, no predators. For thousands of years, this island was their personal lost world, a sanctuary where the Ice Age never truly ended. However, life on an island comes with its own set of challenges. Living in such a small, isolated group for thousands of years had a profound effect on their genetics. Scientists have studied the DNA from the Wrangel Island mammoths, and the results are fascinating. They discovered that this population suffered from a severe loss of genetic diversity. Essentially, with such a small gene pool, harmful mutations began to accumulate. It was a classic case of an extinction vortex. Imagine a photocopier making copies of copies. Over time, the quality degrades. The same thing happened to the mammoth's DNA. They developed genetic defects that likely affected their sense of smell, their fertility, and even the texture of their fur. Some studies suggest their coats might have become more translucent and satiny, which would have offered less insulation against the brutal Arctic cold. They were essentially becoming weaker and more vulnerable with every passing generation. It was a slow, inevitable decline, written into their very genes. They were trapped, both physically on the island and genetically in a downward spiral. So what was the final straw? What finally pushed these ultimate survivors over the edge after millennia of holding on? The exact cause is still debated by scientists, but the evidence points to a combination of factors. Their genetic decline certainly made them more fragile, but the final blow may have been a sudden, catastrophic event. Some researchers point to evidence of extreme weather events, perhaps a massive rain-on-snow incident that would have encased their food supply in a thick layer of impenetrable ice, leading to mass starvation. Another compelling theory involves the arrival of humans. While the island had been a refuge for millennia, archaeological evidence shows that humans did finally arrive on Wrangel Island. Around the same time the mammoths disappeared, it is possible that even a small group of hunters could have been enough to wipe out the already weakened and genetically compromised mammoth population. After surviving for 6,000 years against all odds, their luck finally ran out. The last giants of the Ice Age fell silent forever. The story of the Wrangel Island mammoths is a powerful and bittersweet tale. It's a story of incredible resilience, a testament to life's ability to cling on in the most extreme environments. But it's also a cautionary tale about the dangers of isolation and the fragility of small populations. It shows us that extinction isn't always a sudden, dramatic event. Sometimes it's a long, slow goodbye, a quiet, fading away on a forgotten island at the top of the world. They were the last of their kind, a final, lonely echo of the Great Ice Age, living out their days in a world that had long since moved on. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the incredible story of the Wrangel Island survivors. It is amazing to think about these pockets of the ancient world that persisted long after we thought they were gone. If you found this as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button. And do you not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next adventure into the past. Let me know in the comments what you think happened to the last mammoths. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Upbeat, adventurous music fades into the background. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. We've journeyed through the vast, frozen landscapes of the Ice Age, witnessing the majestic reign of the mammoths. But now, let's fast forward through millennia, leaving the world of ice and snow behind and stepping into our modern era. The mammoths may be gone, but they are far from forgotten. Their stories aren't just confined to history books. They're written in the very earth beneath our feet, waiting to be discovered. Imagine this: a team of paleontologists, armed with shovels, brushes, and an insatiable curiosity, carefully excavating the muddy banks of a winding river. They're not digging for treasure in the typical sense, no gold or jewels. Their treasure is something far more precious: a window into a lost world. Suddenly, a trowel hits something hard. Not a rock. It's bone. A massive, curved piece of ivory begins to emerge from the sediment of mammoth tusk. This isn't just a discovery. It's the beginning of a conversation with the past. These fossils are time capsules. Every bone, every tusk, every fragment holds clues about the life of a creature that walked this planet thousands of years ago. Found buried deep in riverbanks, ancient floodplains, and even construction sites. These remains are the physical evidence of the mammoth's existence. But how do we go from a jumble of bones to a detailed life story? That's where the real magic of paleontology begins. It's a bit like being a detective, and the fossils are our only witnesses. Let's start with the skeleton itself. The sheer size of a mammoth femur or a vertebra immediately tells us about the animal's immense scale and power. But it's the finer details that reveal the most intimate secrets. Scars and healed fractures on the bones can tell us about injuries the mammoth survived, perhaps from a territorial dispute with another mammoth, or a close call with a predator like a saber-toothed cat. These marks are tangible proof of the daily struggles and dangers of life in the Pleistocene. Furthermore, the state of the skeleton can tell us how the mammoth died. Was it a complete, articulated skeleton found lying on its side? This might suggest a relatively peaceful death, perhaps from old age or getting stuck in a bog. Or are the bones scattered and gnawed upon? This paints a more dramatic picture of a carcass being scavenged by a host of other Ice Age animals, a vital part of the ancient food web. Each scenario adds another layer to the story, turning a static fossil into a dynamic scene from the past. The teeth are another incredible source of information. Mammoth teeth are fascinating structures, with ridges of enamel perfect for grinding tough, fibrous grasses. By examining the wear and tear on these teeth, scientists can determine the age of the mammoth at its time of death. A young mammoth would have relatively unworn teeth, while an old matriarch would have teeth ground down from a lifetime of chewing. This allows us to build a picture of the mammoth population's age structure. Were they thriving with lots of young, or was it an aging population struggling to survive? The teeth hold the answer. But perhaps the most amazing storytellers of all are the tusks. A mammoth's tusk is essentially a lifelong diary written in ivory. Like the rings of a tree, tusks grew continuously throughout the mammoth's life, adding a new layer each year. By analyzing cross-sections of a tusk, scientists can see these growth rings. Wide rings indicate years of good health and abundant food, while narrow rings can point to periods of stress, famine, or harsh winters. It is a record of the animal's life experiences and the changing environment it lived in. Even more incredible is what we can learn about a female mammoth's life. The chemical composition of the tusk's ivory changes during pregnancy and nursing. Scientists can analyze the isotopes within these layers to determine how many calves she had, and at what age. It's an astonishingly personal detail, allowing us to connect with these animals not just as a species, but as individuals with their own family histories. A single tusk can reveal a lifetime of motherhood, of struggles and successes, etched forever in ivory. And the story doesn't end there. By analyzing the chemical isotopes in the bones and tusks, we can even figure out what the mammoth was eating and drinking. Different plants have different chemical signatures, which get incorporated into the animal's tissue. This tells us about their diet. Were they grazing on grasses in open plains or browsing on shrubs in a woodland? It also helps us map their migration patterns. We can trace their journeys across vast landscapes, following the changing seasons in search of food and water, all from the chemical clues left behind in their remains. So, the next time you walk along a riverbank or see a construction crew digging deep into the earth, remember what might lie hidden just below the surface. Not just dirt and rock, but the remnants of a forgotten world. The fossils of giants. These mammoths aren't just dusty old bones in a museum. They are storytellers. Each fossil is a chapter in an epic tale of survival, of changing climates, and of life on a planet that looked very different from our own. They are a powerful reminder of the deep history of our world, and the incredible stories that are still waiting to be unearthed. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. It's truly amazing what we can learn from these fossils beneath our feet. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. See you next time. Have you ever imagined walking alongside a real, living mammoth? Those giant, shaggy beasts from the Ice Age. It sounds like something out of a fantasy movie. But for a special group of scientists, it's practically their day job. They're not hunting with spears. They're hunting for knowledge. For clues that bring these magnificent creatures back to life. At least in our understanding. These are the mammoth hunters of science. And their story is as epic as the animals they study. Imagine trekking through the vast, frozen landscapes of Siberia. The wind howls, and the ground is frozen solid for most of the year. This isn't just an adventure, it's a scientific expedition. Here, buried deep within the permafrost. The permanently frozen ground lie the secrets of the past. For paleontologists, this is the ultimate treasure chest. The extreme cold acts like a natural freezer, preserving not just bones, but sometimes entire mammoths, complete with skin, hair, and even internal organs, for tens of thousands of years. Finding a mammoth is just the beginning of a painstaking process. It's not a simple dig. The team often uses water hoses to gently thaw the frozen earth, layer by layer, millimeter by millimeter. It's a race against time. Once exposed to air, the ancient remains can start to decay rapidly. Every movement is deliberate. Every piece of soil is scrutinized. They are part archaeologists, part detectives, carefully documenting the position of every bone, every tusk, every tuft of woolly hair. It's like solving a giant, prehistoric puzzle. One of the most famous mammoth discoveries was a baby named Luba, found by a reindeer herder in Siberia. She was so perfectly preserved that she looked like she had just fallen asleep. At nearly 42,000 years old, Luba gave scientists an unprecedented look into the life of a young mammoth. They could study the milk in her stomach, the mud in her trunk, and learn about her diet, her environment, and even the cause of her untimely death. Discoveries like Luba are incredibly emotional for the scientists. It's a direct, tangible connection to an animal that lived in a world so different from our own. Once the remains are carefully excavated and transported to a lab, the real molecular detective work begins. This is where the geneticists step in. They are searching for the blueprint of life itself, DNA. Getting usable DNA from an ancient specimen is incredibly challenging. Over thousands of years, the long strands of DNA break down into tiny fragments. The scientists use cutting-edge technology to piece these fragments back together, like assembling a shattered mirror. Their goal, to sequence the entire mammoth genome, and incredibly, they've done it. By comparing the mammoth's genetic code to that of its closest living relative, the Asian elephant, scientists are unlocking a world of information. We've learned about their thick, woolly coats, which were not just brown, but could also be blonde or reddish. We've discovered genetic adaptations that allowed them to survive in the freezing cold, like specialized hemoglobin for efficient oxygen transport. This isn't just about satisfying curiosity. It helps us understand evolution and how species adapt to dramatic climate change. But what can a mammoth tell us about the world it lived in? A lot, actually. Scientists analyzed the pollen trapped in their fur and the contents of their stomachs to reconstruct the ancient environment. We now know that the mammoth steppe wasn't just a barren wasteland of ice and snow. It was a vast, grassy plain, teeming with life. Herds of mammoths, woolly rhinos, bison, and horses roamed this ecosystem. Studying mammoths helps us paint a vivid picture of this lost world, a world that vanished at the end of the last ice age. The work of these scientists also brings up a fascinating and controversial question. Could we bring the mammoth back? The idea of de-extinction has moved from science fiction to a real scientific debate. with the complete mammoth genome and advanced genetic engineering techniques like CRISPR. Some scientists believe it might be possible to edit the DNA of an Asian elephant to create a mammoth-like hybrid. They argue that reintroducing these large herbivores could even help restore the Arctic grasslands and combat climate change. However, the ethical and ecological questions are immense. Is it right to bring back a species to a world that has changed so much? What would its quality of life be? Who is responsible for it? There are no easy answers, and these are debates that the scientists themselves grapple with every day. Their work forces us all to think about our role as stewards of the planet and the power that science now holds. From the frozen tundra to the sterile lab, the story of the mammoth hunters is one of passion, patience, and profound discovery. These scientists are modern-day explorers, charting the landscapes of deep time. They piece together the lives of giants, and in doing so, they help us better understand the history of our planet and our own place within it. The mammoth may be gone, but thanks to these dedicated individuals, its incredible story continues to unfold. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back to the Ice Age. If you enjoyed learning about these incredible creatures and the scientists who study them, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more stories from the world of science. We'll see you in the next one. Hello, and welcome back to our journey through the wonders of science. Today, we're diving into a topic straight out of science fiction, yet happening in labs right now. Could the woolly mammoth walk the earth again? It's a question that sparks a sense of awe, a throwback to the Ice Ages, a time when these magnificent, shaggy giants roamed the frozen tundra. But it also opens up a profound ethical debate. So, grab your warmest coat, because we're heading into the deep freeze of history and the cutting edge of genetic science. First, let's talk about the how. The dream of bringing back an extinct species, a process called de-extinction, isn't just a fantasy anymore. The star of this show is a revolutionary gene editing tool you've probably heard of. CRISPR. Think of it as a pair of molecular scissors that can precisely cut and paste DNA. Scientists have recovered remarkably well-preserved mammoth DNA from carcasses found frozen in the Siberian permafrost. These aren't complete, unbroken genomes, mind you. They're fragmented, like an ancient puzzle with millions of missing pieces. The plan isn't to create a 100% pure woolly mammoth from scratch. That's currently beyond our reach. Instead, the leading project, spearheaded by the company Colossal Bio, is aiming to create a mammoth-like elephant. The idea is to take the genome of the mammoth's closest living relative, the Asian elephant, and use CRISPR to edit in key mammoth genes. We're talking about genes for things like a shaggy coat, a layer of insulating fat, smaller ears to prevent heat loss, and specialized hemoglobin that allows blood to release oxygen in cold temperatures. The result wouldn't be a true mammoth, but a cold-resistant hybrid elephant that looks and acts like one. So, how do you go from a string of edited DNA in a lab to a living, breathing animal? This is another monumental challenge. The plan involves creating an embryo with this hybrid DNA and then bringing it to term. But you can't just use an Asian elephant as a surrogate mother. They are an endangered species, and the process would be risky and ethically fraught. Instead, the goal is to develop an artificial womb biobag that can gestate the embryo outside of a living animal. This technology is still in its early stages, but represents a potential pathway to growing a baby mammoth without endangering a living elephant. It's an astonishing feat of bioengineering, if they can pull it off. Now, let's step back from the how and ask the big question. Why? Why spend millions of dollars and immense scientific effort to bring back a version of the woolly mammoth? The proponents of this project have a compelling vision. They argue that reintroducing these large herbivores to the Arctic tundra could actually help combat climate change. This concept is called Pleistocene rewilding. The theory goes like this. Today, the Siberian tundra is often covered by a dark, mossy forest that absorbs sunlight and heat, accelerating the melting of the permafrost. When mammoths roamed this land, they were ecosystem engineers. They knocked down trees, trampled moss, and churned up the soil, which allowed grasslands to flourish. These vast mammoth steppes were lighter in color and reflected sunlight, keeping the ground cooler. By bringing back mammoth-like animals. To do this work, the hope is to restore this ancient grassland ecosystem, which could help insulate the permafrost and prevent the release of massive amounts of trapped carbon and methane into the atmosphere. It's a bold, ambitious plan to use a creature from the past to help secure our future. But with great power comes great responsibility. And this is where the ethical questions really start to pile up. Is it right to bring a species back from extinction? We played a role in their demise. So do we have a moral obligation to reverse it? Or are we playing God, meddling with nature in a way we can't fully comprehend? Think about the first mammoth-like calf, born into a world it hasn't known for 4,000 years. It will have no mother to teach it how to be a mammoth, no herd to guide its social behaviors. We can program its genetics, but can we replicate its culture? The psychological well-being of this pioneering animal is a serious concern. Furthermore, what are the unintended consequences for the modern Arctic ecosystem? Introducing a massive herbivore could have unpredictable effects on the existing flora and fauna. While the goal is to restore an ancient balance, ecosystems are incredibly complex. Could we accidentally create new problems while trying to solve an old one? Critics argue that the resources poured into extinction could be better spent on conserving the species that are alive today. The ones teetering on the brink of extinction right now, like the Asian elephant itself. They argue that we should focus on preventing future extinctions rather than trying to reverse past ones. It's a classic dilemma. The allure of technological achievement versus the wisdom of ecological caution. On one hand, the scientific knowledge gained from a project like this could be immense, pushing the boundaries of genetics, reproductive biology, and conservation. It could offer new tools to help endangered species, perhaps by increasing their genetic diversity. On the other hand, it raises fundamental questions about our role in the natural world. Are we stewards, or are we arrogant creators, so preoccupied with whether we could that we don't stop to think if we should? This isn't just about mammoths. The success or failure of this project will set a precedent for de-extinction efforts targeting other species, from the passenger pigeon to the Tasmanian tiger. We are standing at a crossroads. The technology is advancing at a breathtaking pace, and soon, these decisions will move from the realm of theory to reality. What do you think? Is resurrecting the woolly mammoth a brilliant solution to help heal our planet? Or is it a step too far, a risky gamble with unpredictable consequences? This conversation is one of the most important of our time, blending past, present, and future in a way that challenges us to think deeply about our place on this planet. It's a story of loss, of innovation, and of the profound responsibility we carry. Thank you so much for joining me on this thought-provoking exploration today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy diving deep into these big questions, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more. We'll see you next time. Hello, fellow history enthusiasts, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're venturing into the vast, windswept landscapes of the Great Plains, a place where the echoes of giants still resonate. We're talking about the Columbian mammoth, a creature so immense its legacy continues to shape the very fabric of this land, thousands of years after its last footsteps faded. This is Chapter 19. Echoes on the Prairie. Let's start our journey in a place many of us have visited, a museum. Standing before the towering skeleton of a mammoth is a truly humbling experience. The sheer scale is almost unbelievable, the curve of those enormous tusks, the massive, weight-bearing leg bones. These fossils aren't just old bones. They are time capsules. They're tangible links to a Pleistocene world teeming with megafauna. Places like the Mammoth site in Hot Springs, South Dakota, or the Waco Mammoth National Monument in Texas offer more than just a display. They are active paleontological sites where the stories of these animals are unearthed, bone by bone. Each discovery, from a perfectly preserved tooth to a cluster of skeletons, tells us about their diet, their social structures, and the dramatic climate shifts that led to their extinction. These museum halls and dig sites are libraries of natural history, and the mammoths are their most epic volumes. But the story of the mammoth doesn't just live behind glass. It's woven into the rich tapestry of oral traditions among the indigenous tribes of the Great Plains for countless generations. Long before the first paleontologists arrived, these communities knew of the great beasts that once roamed their ancestral lands. They had names for them, stories that explained the massive bones that would sometimes surface from riverbanks or eroded hillsides. These weren't just myths. They were a form of ancestral science, a way of understanding the deep history of the land. For tribes like the Lakota, Pawnee, and Cheyenne, the mammoth, or the great-grandfather of the buffalo, often represents strength, ancient wisdom, and the cyclical nature of life and extinction. These stories, passed down from elder to child, are a living, breathing connection to the Pleistocene, a testament to the profound relationship between the first peoples of this continent and the incredible animals they shared it with. They remind us that scientific discovery and cultural heritage are not separate, but two sides of the same ancient coin. Now, let's step outside, away from the museums and the fireside stories, and look at the land itself. Can you see the mammoths here? If you know where to look, you can. The Great Plains we see today were sculpted, in part, by these ancient engineers. Think about the countless wallows or depressions that dot the landscape. For years, scientists debated their origin. Now, many believe these were created by mammoths and other who would roll in the mud to cool off and protect their skin from insects. Over millennia, these repeated actions compacted the soil, creating depressions that still hold water today, forming unique microhabitats for plants and animals. They are ghost ponds, left behind by giants. Even the distribution of certain plants can be traced back to them. Mammoths were voracious eaters, consuming hundreds of pounds of vegetation daily. They were also incredible fruits with large seeds, like the Osage orange or the honey locust, have no modern native animal large enough to effectively eat and disperse them. Their anachronistic design points to a lost partner, the mammoth. These trees are living relics, botanical ghosts of a world where massive herbivores roamed, planting future forests with every step. The very contours of rivers and the composition of prairie soil were influenced by the movements and life cycles of these herds. The land is a palimpsest, a manuscript that has been written on over and over. And the Mammoths wrote one of its earliest and most dramatic chapters. So, the next time you drive through the seemingly endless expanse of the Great Plains, remember that you are traveling through a landscape haunted by giants. Their bones fill our museums. Their spirits live on in ancient stories, and their actions are etched into the very soil beneath our feet. From the fossils that inspire our AO, to the oral traditions that preserve ancient knowledge, and even the subtle dips and rises of the prairie itself, the mammoth's presence is undeniable. They are a powerful reminder of the deep, interconnected history of our planet, a story of incredible life, dramatic change, and the enduring echoes that persist long after the giants have gone. They teach us that extinction is not just an ending, but a transformation that continues to shape our world in ways we are only just beginning to understand. The prairie holds its secrets close, but if we listen carefully, we can still hear the thunder of their passing. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. It's a powerful feeling to connect with these magnificent creatures, isn't it? If you found the story as fascinating as I do, please give this video a thumbs up. And do you forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next exploration into the past. We've got so many more stories to uncover together. Until next time, stay curious. The sun bleeds across the horizon, painting the vast expanse of the Great Plains in hues of orange and purple. The day ends, just as an era once did. The air, once thick with the thundering footsteps of giants, now carries only the whisper of the wind through the tall grass. It's a sound that speaks of time, of memory, and of what lies beneath our feet. For thousands of years, this was their kingdom. The Columbian mammoth, a creature of immense power and gentle spirit, roamed these lands. Imagine it. Herds so vast they seemed to stretch from one end of the sky to the other. Their tusks, elegant and curved, would catch the first light of dawn. Their deep, rumbling calls were the heartbeat of this continent, a sound that defined an entire epoch. They were more than just animals. They were architects of the landscape, their movements shaping the very earth, carving paths that rivers would later follow, and dispersing seeds that would grow into ancient forests. They were a force of nature, perfectly adapted to the challenges of the Ice Age. Their thick, shaggy coats protected them from the biting cold, and their massive size was a fortress against the predators of the time. The saber-toothed cats and the dire wolves. They were social creatures, living in tight-knit family groups, led by wise matrons. They protected their young, mourned their dead, and shared a bond that we are only just beginning to understand through the fossil record. They were intelligent, sentient beings, each with a life as rich and complex as our own. We find their stories etched in bone and ivory, buried deep within the soil. Each fossil is a word, each skeleton a sentence in the epic saga of the Pleistocene. In places like the Mammoth site in Hot Springs, South Dakota, we see a snapshot of their lives, a moment frozen in time. Dozens of mammoths, trapped in a sinkhole, their bones preserved in a silent testament to their existence. It's a place of both tragedy and wonder, a window into a world that feels impossibly distant, yet is right here, under our feet. Paleontologists, like detectives of deep time, piece together these clues. They analyze the growth rings on tusks to understand the seasons of a mammoth's life. They study the wear on their massive molars to know what they ate. They examine the arrangement of their bones to learn how they lived and how they died. It is a painstaking process, a labor of love dedicated to giving a voice to these silent giants. Each discovery, no matter how small, adds another layer to our understanding, bringing the world of the mammoths into sharper focus. But as the great ice sheets retreated and the climate warmed, their world began to change. The vast, cold grasslands they depended on started to shrink, replaced by forests and new types of vegetation. The world that had sustained them for millennia was transforming faster than they could adapt. This was not a single, catastrophic event, but a slow, creeping change that gradually tightened its grip. The giants, for the first time, were vulnerable. And then, a new predator arrived on the continent, a creature small in stature, but with a mind unlike any other. Humans, armed with intelligence, cooperation, and finely crafted spear points. Early peoples began to hunt the mammoths. For these early hunters, a single mammoth kill could mean survival for their entire clan for weeks, providing not just meat, but hides for shelter, bones for tools, and ivory for art. The evidence is there, in the form of Clovis points found embedded among mammoth ribs, a clear sign of the dramatic encounters that took place on these plains. The combination of a rapidly changing climate and the pressure from human hunting proved to be too much. The thundering herds began to dwindle. The heartbeat of the plains grew fainter. It wasn't a sudden silence, but a slow fade, like a song ending one note at a time. The last populations became isolated, pockets of a once great empire, until they too vanished, leaving behind only their bones and their legends. The age of the megafauna was over. Now, as night falls, the plains are quiet. The stars emerge, the same stars that once looked down upon the herds of mammoths. The wind rustles the grass, and if you listen closely, you can almost hear an echo of their passing. You can almost feel the ground tremble with the memory of their weight. Their story is a profound lesson in the fragility of life, a reminder that even the mightiest can fall. It teaches us about the immense power of climate to shape destiny and the impact that one species can have on another. We stand in their world, long after they have departed. We are the inheritors of the land they shaped. And as we look out over this immense, silent landscape, we feel a sense of connection, a sense of awe for what came before. They may be gone, but their shadows still linger in the earth, the mammoths of the Great Plains, resting forever beneath the stars. Thank you for joining us on this journey back in time. If you are moved by the story of these incredible creatures, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories from the deep past. We'll see you next time.